All right, here we go. 5, 4, 3. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's first session for the QGIS Open Day of 24 September 2021. We are very excited to introduce Immo Blecher. How do I pronounce your name properly? Immo. And Immo is going to be showing us some web-based groundwater information mapping systems that he's developed using QGIS and Lizmap. So over to you, Immo.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tim. What I'm going to do is quickly run through a couple of slides just to give some background. And then I will try and run some live projects and show you what I've basically done. So I'm going to quickly share my screen so that we can switch to the slideshow. Share my screen, great stuff. And I'm going to go to my slideshow. There we go. Just hide this. Great stuff. I hope everybody can see that. So just a little bit on the background side. You might all know that the web-based mapping of groundwater information is becoming a big trend all over the world. And if you search the internet, you will see that there are many countries that have excellent mapping websites. Very often those have WMS links, and some of those are updated regularly, and others are quite stagnant, so they don't really update any information, or maybe only update them now and then. But if we look at Southern Africa or Africa in general, we don't have many of those mapping websites available. And this is due to the fact that groundwater data is sitting in various databases, and those databases often don't talk to each other. And the data is very often difficult to get. So you would have different databases for surface water, for groundwater, for weather data, etc., etc. And it's really difficult to get all the data together. And obviously recent drought situations have prompted various projects from various organizations to bring groundwater information to the web. And that was done primarily to educate the public and also encourage participation of the public. But also to initiate sound groundwater management practices and policies by creating public-private partnerships. Now, if we look at some of the map projects that we have done, there were some requirements for that. And obviously, first thing was it needs to be a web-based GIS map, some sort of dashboard style map in some cases. So obviously it needs to be accessible to the public, and a buzzword, a very modern buzzword these days, is citizen science. You know, we try and get citizens involved. The third thing is these mapping projects must be sustainable, and that is a critical part. With other words, we need to look into the future and see, you know, how long can we keep this website going and updated long after the project has actually finished. And that's one of the most important parts. Another point was that these things should be easily repeatable for other areas. So if I'm doing a project in one area, it should be pretty easy to repeat the whole thing in a totally different area without too much effort. Then obviously the projects need to be cost effective. With other words, must be implemented quickly. And for that to happen, the best was obviously to use open source software and components as far as possible. So what are those components, those open source components that we specifically use? Obviously, we use the PostgreSQL database, various of those, and we have groundwater data in one database and all the other GIS layers in another database. And depending on which area it is, we might be sitting with 2 or 3 different Postgre connections in QGIS, and obviously from the mapping side on the web to query the data. Then we also use the Aquabase water resources management software, and I'll show a couple of links right at the end where you can have a look at where can you get these things. And then obviously QGIS desktop was used. Then on the server side, the QGIS server and some sort of web client. And I often use some data management software. This is optional, but it is recommended. And I use dbeaver, Community Edition, or PG Admin, or any of the others, because the DB Manager in QGIS has limited functionality, and one needs to really understand the database a little bit more and play around on the database side with some sort of tool. So what are the options for web-based maps? In our case, I've used Lizmap, which is what I'm talking about today, and Lizmap is pretty much PHP, JavaScript, HTML built, and uses those web languages. And Lizmap also has a plugin in which you can use inside QGIS. I'll show that one as well. Then we have QWC2, which is based on React.js and open layers. I have used that one before. Then we have QGIS to Web, which is a plugin in QGIS itself. Also uses open layers, Leaflet, or Mapbox. Quite a nice tool as well. And then you have different server versions like GeoServer and MapServer, etc., etc., etc. There's quite a few others, but those are the main open source ones that are being used these days. And all of these have their advantages and disadvantages. So what and how? What is needed to do this whole thing? Obviously, you need some server PC. With Apache or Jinx web server, ideally some sort of Linux server. You need the database, in our case, PostgreSQL, and that should be ideally on the same server. Is not really necessary, but it's better to have it because it makes things a lot easier and makes it a lot faster as well. Then you need the QGIS server installed. In our case, you need the Lizmap web client, and then you need your QGIS desktop to prepare your projects. And then obviously you need your spatial layers. You need your groundwater data and your roads and rivers and whatever you want to display, you need those. So what and how is the whole thing working? Some of you might know this, some of you might not, but this is a good start. So how to get going? You need to have a running web server where you obviously install your QGIS server long-term release, in our case the latest 3.16, and set all your environment variables. Just follow the instructions on the internet, it's all there. You download and install Lizmap. Again, follow the instructions. Pretty easy to set up. Then you would install your Lizmap plugin in your QGIS desktop. You create your project and set your QGIS server settings for all layers in the project. So you must make sure that it is a valid QGIS server project. There is a little test function on there. I'll show that as well for those that don't know. And then you run the Lizmap plugin and configure the layers and the map. So on the server side, You would then obviously copy this whole project file and the Lizmap configuration file that you have on your desktop. You copy that to the web server. I use FTP for that. That's the easiest. In the Lizmap admin interface, you create the so-called repositories. Basically, those are the folders where your project files are located. And you can also set a few settings. I'm going to show that as well. Then you create the content for the landing page. That's basically the one that shows the different projects on some sort of a web page when you go to any domain which you have set up, and it shows the projects on the first page. And then you can optionally also create users and groups with different permissions for access to the maps and the layers. So where did we get all the data? Obviously, the point data is our borehole, springs, wells, etc., etc. Most of those came from the National Groundwater Archive, which is sitting at the Department of Water and Sanitation. But we also got quite a lot of data from the City of Cape Town, and then obviously project data. So a lot of consultants in the areas, they have done various projects and they have created spreadsheets and all kinds of other access databases, etc., etc. All those were collected and they were imported into the same Postgre database. Chemistry data for groundwater quality, etc. Those came from the water management system, also from the Department of Water and Sanitation, and also from the City of Cape Town. And then we have rivers, dams, measuring points. So those are basically points where samples are regularly taken or measurements done in rivers or dams. Those came from DWS also, the hydrology section. And then we also use rainfall data because people are very often interested in rainfall, what's happening with our rainfall. So those came from hydrology and then also various internet downloads. Then the normal layer data is hydrogeology, rivers, dams, etc. A lot of those came also from DWS. And then also OSM downloads. And then we have different base maps. So some of those are built into the Lizmap functionality, but also the NGI, which is also a government institution, which has a lot of layer data available. Also for download, they've got a very nice portal as well. So what does it look like? I'm going to switch now between, basically this slide is just giving me some sort of hint what I want to show. So I'm going to quickly run through the QGIS desktop and then also show what the groundwater data looks like. Then I'm going to quickly show the Lizmap plugin. And then some projects, the Lizmap admin interface and also the actual maps. So let me quickly switch to my, just a page there. Right, I'm actually using two different versions of QGIS on my PC. I prefer always to, for my projects, work in the latest version. So I've got the 3.20. And as you can see, I'm working on Ubuntu Linux, but I also have installed the long-term release with Flatpak, so that I can do the projects for Lizmap, because Lizmap is very finicky. It prefers to work with the long-term release versions of QGIS server. So this is what I've also installed on the server side, and on the desktop side, I'm also using the long-term release, the latest long-term release version. So as you can see, I've got one of the projects open here. On the left-hand side are all my different layers that I've got available. And it actually doesn't matter what is switched on and off here in this project, because you will see that in the Lizmap plugin, you actually then configure what you want to see on the actual online map. So what is important on this side is also that you can add more base maps, because there are a few built-in ones, but as I said, you can also use all kinds of other WMS maps that you can add to your project, and you can use them as base maps. Just very briefly to the QGIS project properties, obviously on the QGIS server side. So in this tab here, make sure that you fill in a couple of details there on the top. But what is important is that here at the bottom, the WF capabilities, those need to be switched on specifically for those layers that you actually want to use for presenting on your map, your online map. So these are very often, if you forget to switch these on, sometimes you won't be able to see anything or to do specifically the charts in the Lizmap functionalities. Right at the bottom here, you will have a test configuration. You can launch that, and it will tell you that the project is valid. If the project is not valid, you might not even be able to publish it properly on the on Lizmap and on the web map side. So what is the Lizmap plugin doing? You can switch that on, or click on the little plugin button. You will see there's on the left-hand side, there's various map options. Here you can set your extent, switch on a couple of things that you want to see right in the beginning. But what is also important is you can set here access and restrict access to certain groups of people. And we're going to come to that when we look into the Lizmap admin interface. So here you can define groups that can actually see the maps. Then you have all the layers. Here you can obviously decide which ones do you want to switch on and off right in the beginning. So if it's toggled, then it's switched on. If it's not toggled, then it's not switched on. So that you can set up for each and every layer that you want to set, you can do here. Then you have the base layers, and you will see what those are and how they display. I have, for example, OpenStreetMaps and the Slam and Toner, but also switched on the Google Streets, satellite, the hybrids, and the terrain. Obviously, you need your API key for that. And here at the bottom, you set which is the active base layer on startup. Then there's various functions here, locate by layer. This is just for searching data on the web. You can tell it which tables must be available as attribute tables, which you can download. You can also enable layer editing, which I haven't done. You can set tooltips for certain layers, form filters. You can filter by user. There's a few new functionalities down here. Then there's a data viz part, which is a little charting tool, which works quite well if you know how it works. It's a little bit of fiddling around, but if you know what you're doing, you can get that going. I'm going to show a few examples. But it also has got a time manager. So if you have got temporal data, you can use that as well. And it has also got an atlas feature where you can show different maps based on the atlas that you set up in QGIS. So that is basically the Lizmap tool, the Lizmap plugin. So if we can go to the first project. Now, first of all, you will see that this is our the so-called landing page. So I'm giving a short introduction of what we're using, how we do it, and obviously a disclaimer in terms of use. And then you have available projects available here at the bottom. Now, in my case, I've got 2 here. And I'm going to show you the first project now before I switch over and log in as a different user. So what you will see here is, and these are these 2 maps are available to the public already. They have been done for 2 projects quite a while ago. In fact, this one was for the city of Cape Town and Environs. That was done 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago. Initially, I did this project on QWC2, and what that looked like, I'm going to quickly show you. This is what it looked like. I just had a few screenshots on that. It's basically another web client, a little bit more tricky to set up. I found that we had to do quite a bit of customization on the different source codes of the different modules. And I found that QWC2 was quite difficult to update because we had so many little changes to the source code. We found it difficult to maintain forward. So there was a lot of work involved if you want to upgrade to the latest versions. But it was quite a nice web client. It basically has got layers and legend on the right-hand side. You will find the same layers I used in Lizmap. It pops up info here, feature infos. Another example was this one. You could also set different base maps and also have different layer info and polygon layers, search functions, etc., etc. So that was a nice, and I believe is still quite an active developed client, and one can have a look at that in future again. So what happens here is on the left-hand side is basically like in QGIS is your layers. You can switch them on and off. As you can see, these are my different sites here. For example, we've got rivers, dams, pans, canals, monitoring stations, etc., etc. These just give you an overview. And the same as with boreholes, you can click on any of those and it will bring up a little pop-up and tell you where it is, what the longitude, latitudes are, what site type it is, etc. If you switch on, we had quite a few different ones here, also monitoring networks. Now, one of the monitoring networks is the DWS Hydra water level monitoring network. That is quite updated. The Department of Water and Sanitation measures a lot of these boreholes on a regular basis for water levels, and some of them also for chemistry. And that data is readily available for download from the website, DWS website, the National Groundwater Archive. But for this project, I also used, because it was a citizen science project, and we wanted to show the public what is available. We have, for example, some river stage height and flow monitoring stations. You can, by using this little button, you can always switch on the legends, as with, for example, for boreholes, different types of boreholes, well points. But we, for example, have unverified real-time stage heights. These are quite interesting because you can click on here as well. It will tell you where it is. So this one is in the Berg River. And then we provide sort of links to online charts. So clicking on any of these links will bring up a little chart. As you can see, today is the 24th, so it will show you a chart of the Berg River for the last 14 days. Now, a lot of these, you can also see the flow chart for that. So this is in cubic meters a second. You can see that the flow decreases slowly. So there was obviously a rainfall event here, and then your flow decreases. Now, these are just some live maps. But as it says, it's unverified data. So what happens is that once the data is verified, it becomes actually downloadable from the internet, from the DWS website, and you can plot them as charts. Now the same applies to dams. Same thing, and this was a critical one when we had the dams also always almost reaching 10% levels in 2018. So there's Theewaterskloof Dam. If we click on that now, you will also see I'm also getting links. Same thing here. This is the measuring point in the Theewaterskloof Dam. And the interesting one is obviously the capacity. So there's a 100% capacity line, and anything above that is obviously overflowing, and anything below that. So we are sitting here today at around 99.2%. Yeah, around about. Right. So this is a little bit outside of groundwater. If we go to the homepage, there are the two projects. So if you want to memorize this one, it's www.groundwaterinfo.africa. So if I connect, I'm going to log in with admin now. You will see that there's a lot more projects suddenly available here, even some that we use as admin here for testing. And I'm going to show you a little bit now. The first project that you've seen was the one for the Water Research Commission, which is already a couple of years old. But I try and keep it updated. So the nice thing about this is as soon as I add any data to the groundwater database, it immediately will show on the map. So if I add another borehole or 2 or 10, which lies in that particular area, they will immediately show up on the map. Now, if we zoom in quite a lot, then we get to another project, which we have done for a mining area in the Langebaan area. So this information is obviously not available to the public, and you need to have a login to get to that particular map. But as you can see in the legend, we've got the mine here, Langebaan is there, and there are various monitoring boreholes that are used to check what the water levels and the quality is doing. So here we use the DataVis charting facility quite a lot, and we are still working on it. I'm going to switch off a few here, but for example, if I click on this one, you will see that it gives me again some basic information there on where the site is, what kind of purpose the site is used for. And then we've got various charts here at the bottom. This one is for the quality, obviously our electrical conductivity that was monitored from about 2017 until today, so about 4 years of monitoring, and you can show different limits that you want to achieve or not want to achieve. And the same applies here to the water level. So in this case, we are measuring the quality and we are measuring the water levels in the area. And that you can do for any of these boreholes here as well. So if we go into the mine area itself, you will see same thing happens here. Water level declining. Why is that declining? Because we want to get where the actual pit is. This is where it is. We want to get it dry. So how can we present a little bit more here in terms of background? This is OSM background. If you look into the layers here, right at the bottom, there are the base layers. So if you click on those, you will see there are the ones that come with Lizmap, which I switched on in the Lizmap plugin. But I added those here as well. So you could, for example, also add the NGI imagery to that. And there is the actual mine that we are monitoring with those boreholes. Now, we've recently also started around about in April another project which I'm doing together with Frank Sokolitz. And Frank is by the way, he twisted my arm to actually do this presentation today. So thanks, Frank, if you're listening. But this is the latest project that we're doing for the WWF, and which takes a little bit of a different approach. It has got a sort of a dashboard built in. Now, there was some research done. What do people want to see on a map? What do they want to see on a dashboard? And this one specifically is for groundwater in the Table Mountain water source area. It pops up a little info introduction here in the beginning. If you click on OK, you will see that these are the 3 different water source areas in the Cape Town area. So we've got the Table Mountain, then the Table Mountain and Cape Peninsula, and the red is the Cape Peninsula and Flats groundwater. And all these 3 have different properties. I'm going to switch them off now so that you can see a little bit more of the boreholes. So the project is also about monitoring. So we want to monitor different areas and show the public what is actually happening in these areas. What's happening with rainfall, what is happening with our groundwater levels, because more and more people start using groundwater, and obviously if they live in these particular areas, they want to know what is going on around them. So we've taken the data viz, and Frank has done quite a bit of JavaScript on this, and to display some information on this. So what we've done is, if you look at the complete area that we are showing here, the total area with all the boreholes that you're seeing here, those are the ones that we are monitoring. You would see that we have average water levels that we display here in these little blocks. So you immediately get an idea that our latest is now 6 meters. Last 5 years, the average was 6.1. So we are pretty close. Last year, this time, the water level was a lot higher. And in the last 3 months, the average was about 3.8. It was also a bit higher than the latest. Now this obviously uses the latest data. So if we add more data to it, you know, these figures will immediately change. So if I add the latest downloaded data for these monitoring boreholes here, this value will change immediately. Then there's the water level chart, which is the daily average of everything here that you see on the map. There is some data missing there, which DWS knows that it's not there, but they don't know where it is, interestingly enough. And there's also a rainfall chart here, which is actually goes back until from the 1950s to very recent. Now, what we've done now is we have identified certain monitoring areas, and we are adding as we go along in the project. There will be 3 more monitoring areas added. At this stage, we've got 3 of them. So I'm going to go and choose one of these monitoring areas, Newlands. Everybody knows where that is. So it will zoom in there, and you will see these figures down here at the bottom immediately change. So now it's only taking those boreholes here, which are sitting in this monitoring area, to calculate these values. So now we are looking at the Newlands monitoring area. Also, you can see the water level chart changes so that it only shows for the monitoring boreholes in that area. And the same applies to the rainfall, only filtered according to the monitoring in these areas. Now you might ask, I don't see the rainfall. Okay, let's switch it on. If we look at our other geo sites here, our monitoring sites obviously is the important one. But if you switch on the rainfall stations, you will see that these are represented with pie charts, and these pies are also done in QGIS using the little chart facilities in your symbologies. So what we've done is you can see immediately the size is obviously the total rainfall. So that if I click on any of these, will pop up my information of my rainfall station. This is obviously my Table Mountain location in Newlands, and it will give me for January, February the averages per month, which are displayed in the pies. It will also give me the annual total, and it will give me a chart here at the bottom as a bar chart over the rainfall. Now you can zoom into these areas, etc., etc. So there's quite a lot of things that you can do in these charts, but for producing this rainfall chart and these water levels here, it's only using the sites which are in this little monitoring area. So if we switch the monitoring area to something else, which is, for example, the Philippi area, you will see these figures will change now. There we go. Now it takes into account only those for Philippi boreholes, and these are mostly the ones that the DWS monitors. Quite updated data, I think until August almost. And obviously only these two stations there, rainfall stations. So this is a different approach again. So you can see that with these three projects that I've quickly shown you, you can do all kinds of wonderful things. One of the nice things is the data functionality here. So I could go onto any of these monitoring boreholes here that we've just seen, and I'm going to click on that one, and it will give me my daily water levels here, and I can actually download them. Yeah, and the same you can obviously do with, we're going to close there, sorry, if I'm going to go onto the data, and I'm going to, you can use any of those, you can go to the rainfall stations here as well, click on any of those, and you will get your rainfall data, which you can download. So that is our data facility, the charting facility. What is also nice, you can draw on the map if you want to present something to somebody or show. You can draw little lines, polygons, etc. But you can also import GeoJSON, GPX, or KML files to display additional stuff on there. You can print the chart. And if you actually use the geolocation tool, which is also quite nice now, if you use that, you can actually zoom in quite a lot and switch on the geolocation, and you can walk basically to a borehole by switching that functionality on. The information panel is the one that gives you all the information what the project is about. And what is also quite important here in this case is any of the layers, on any of the layers, you can, if you click on the actual layer itself, it will give you a description on what this layer actually depicts, what it shows. So what is a borehole, etc., etc. But the little I or this documentation button will also then jump to additional information. So the public can immediately read what is a borehole. It takes it to the Department of Water and Sanitation Groundwater Dictionary. So you can read up on additional things like what is an aquifer, etc. And that applies to all the layers here as well. Now, one of the things that people are always interested in is obviously our groundwater occurrence. Where do I find groundwater? And what are my borehole prospects? Let's switch that on. If you click on the legend there, you will see that there is certain success rates of drilling a successful borehole and also how strong it might be. As soon as you switch on the layer, obviously the background disappears a little bit, but you can switch it on and you could, for example, choose a different opacity by which you can still see the background map and have the other borehole prospects overlain onto it. So there's lots of possibilities with this. I really can recommend using Lizmap for something like this because it's quite user-friendly, quite easy to set up. And it's quite an effective tool to use to present not only groundwater data, but any data on the web browser. So very briefly, where do I get all this? QGIS, everybody should know by now where to get it. Lizmap is on the lizmap.com website. If you want to use the groundwater management software, just go to the aquabase.blecher.co.za website where you can find additional information on the software. And you can also download the software there. It's also open source. The only thing that here you will find on the homepage, you can go to the downloads and you can download it. And then obviously for Postgre, you can go to that website and download the database. Aquabase can use different databases, basically to store not only groundwater specific data, but also rainfall, dam levels, river levels, etc., etc. So in a nutshell, this was my presentation.
Thank you so much, Immo. You might have noticed we were joined during your call by another guest. So maybe I can introduce Etienne Trimal, who's I would say a large part of the brains behind Lizmap. Is that fair to say, Etienne?
Hi, everyone.
And I thought we could maybe just have some comments from Etienne, having watched your presentation. Maybe he's got some suggestions or tips or thoughts on what you presented.
Yeah, so I'm part of Freelease, like the company behind Lizmap. So I'm not the author of Lizmap. It's like we are in a team. And thanks a lot for your presentation because it was quite nice. And I could notice that you were using like our release candidate on a production server. So you like adventure.
Yes.
Hopefully we are going to release this new version soon. We just merged the last feature this week. So we are planning to release Lizmap 3.5 end of September, beginning of October. And I noticed that you also did like some very nice presentation about data viz. I guess you went with a lot of features and research to make the data viz working properly.
Yes, we have used it extensively, and as you know, every time something works or doesn't work, I quickly jump on the net and send out help, please help.
Yes, exactly. It would be nice to be able to use Dataplotly because it's the same engine behind.
Yes.
So it would make it like easier to try first in QGIS desktop your plots with a Dataplotly config, and then having like, it's part of the roadmap too. Like, it's a wish. It's not easy to get there, but it would be nice.
Yes, but I can promise you, I will test it more, and I will probably at some stage also maybe make some feature requests. If I find something that might be nice to add as well.
Sure.
So thank you. It's a very nice feature, very nice plugin, and a nice tool to use to produce maps on the internet. Very nice.
Sure, you shouldn't hesitate to create tickets on GitHub, and we try to answer or to build a community with users and translators, and it's all open source. Everything is on GitHub, so like there's translation, bugs, feature requests. And it's not easy to understand sometimes also, like Lizmap, you need like QGIS server, you need like the PHP application, you might need as well QGIS server plugins.
Yes.
You add plugins on QGIS server, you will enable more features in Lizmap to have like more extensions where when you download data from Lizmap, or now you can have Lizmap QGIS server plugin as well in QGIS server. You can then like evaluate QGIS expressions. So if in your forms you have some constraints or some default values or some geometry checks, the Lizmap plugin is used on QGIS server as well to evaluate the QGIS expression and return the value. So it's not easy sometimes to understand, but we are trying our best to to make it clear.
Yeah, no, we are getting there.
Yes. Tim, you are muted.
Sorry about that. So we have one question from the chat room from Gestio. I don't know how to pronounce your name. Sorry if I said it wrong. He's from southern Spain. He wants to know, he says, in order to prepare a similar river basin project, the main concern is about keeping data which shouldn't be available to the public. Is it safe enough in Lizmap? So I guess he's basically asking about the permissions framework and if you can hide or make certain parts of the data accessible only to authenticated users.
Yeah, so there's different levels about authentication. Like you can have like projects which are private, so you like some users might just won't be able to see them. You can also have permissions at the level, at the layer level. So you might have in a single project having some layers which are visible or not, according to if you are in the admin group or if you are just an anonymous user or logged in user. And there is also like per feature level permission. So if you have like in your attribute table, you can set like some groups or some users which are enabled, like where you can like say, okay, this user can see this feature. And for the next version of Lizmap 3.5, you can now have like a filtering like per polygon. So if you have like a municipalities layer with municipality A, B, C, you can have like a point layer, like shops or like, and then like you can set like, okay, only this group of user can see the features in the layer A, or like, I mean, the municipality A or B, so you can do some special filtering. So it's all, the filtering is done in QGIS. So if your QGIS server like is not available, like every request should go through Lizmap. and Lizmap will just make like a kind of proxy to check like user permissions, and only Lizmap is allowed to request data to QGIS server. So it's pretty safe to use. Yeah, like if your QGIS server is not available like online straight, like if all request goes through Lizmap, it's all right.
So you've got a kind of a reverse proxy
Yeah.
between Lizmap and QGIS server. One question from me is just about the theming. Is there a place that you can download and find different themes for Lizmap, or like?
That's a good question. We know that we must spend some time on theming and just updating to latest like trends. In the documentation, there is a link to how you can customize your theme. Some of the settings are already available, like straight from the administration interface, to change the logo and just the colors. But then if you want to go further, you can, like, there is in the documentation, there is a link where you can download the full theme used on Lizmap. You can customize the CSS, and then if you drop it on your server, like not in the Lizmap source code, but in your project folder, Lizmap will first try to check if there is a custom theme, and then it will override the default one. We don't have a library of theme available. We have a library of JavaScript script. I think you may have used one or some in your presentation. But for the theme, yeah, we don't have it. It's just spread online.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. You know, at this stage in the admin interface, you can't play around with colors, etc. So if you don't like the standard grayish sort of, I changed also some colors, but basics can be done quite easily. But as Etienne said, you know, you can also go a lot further with that if you download different themes.
So we're coming to the end of our session. Maybe I could close out the session by asking you each to give a 1-minute top tip for somebody new to Lizmap. Like, what's your best tip for a new user? Maybe start with you, Immo.
Yeah, Lizmap is quite a versatile web publishing tool. Highly recommended because it works quite well with QGIS. Obviously, if you're comfortable with QGIS, you will understand Lizmap. And the nice thing is, what you prepare in your QGIS project is exactly what you will see on the map. So the colors are the same, the sizes are the same, everything is exactly the same. So I would say this is an ideal combination of QGIS server, QGIS desktop, and Lizmap to publish maps on the internet.
Thank you, Immo. And Etienne?
Yeah, one tip is it's quite geek, but there is a Docker Compose project to try Lizmap. So because you need a server with the PHP application running on a server, but if you want to try on your laptop, then there is a Docker project that you just run, and you have a Lizmap running on your computer to first give it a try. And then, like, if you like it, then you install it somewhere. But first, if you want to try, think about Docker. There is one link where everything is set up inside.
Is the Docker configuration good for production use as well, or?
Yeah, we are using it in production because we are also providing hosting solutions about Lizmap. So we host many customers, and we are using it in production using Docker.
Okay, thank you, and thank you both of you for your hard work and contributions, and for sharing all the work you've been doing, Immo. It's really great to see such a comprehensive and complex application being developed on top of Lizmap. So it's a really nice use case. We look forward to hearing about your updates at some stage in the future.
Exactly.
Maybe Etienne, we need a presentation from you on Open Day going.
We'll definitely think about it.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to end the stream there.
Okay. Thank you, Tim.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.